It always begins with a knock, software repetitive, measured, not the knock of a neighbor or a delivery man. It comes late, past the hour when visitors are expected. The person inside the home rises slowly, confused, cautious. The house is quiet, the television on mute, the hallway lights dim. Outside the peephole, 2 children stand in the cold. Their heads are tilted downward, their hair obscures part of their faces, and their clothes look several decades outdated. They don't speak right away, they just wait. When the door creaks open, they finally look up. That's when the terror begins. Their eyes are entirely black. No white, no iris, no soul. Just an endless void. And then they ask to be let in. Reports of black-eyed kids, commonly abbreviated as BEKs, have exploded in online forums, paranormal podcasts, and real-world testimonies since the late 1990s. But these aren't ordinary urban legends. The consistency across hundreds of unconnected encounters defies simple explanation. Individuals from different continents describe eerily similar events. Children with pitch-black eyes appearing at homes, parking lots, rural roads, and remote cabins, always with the same request: to be invited inside. The accounts vary in location, but rarely in detail. Witnesses report intense feelings of dread, pressure in the chest, and a primal sense of fear that defies logic. It's not just the eyes, it's the atmosphere that changes when they arrive. Electronics malfunction, radios go static, dogs howl or cower. The air feels thicker, colder, almost electrically charged. Something ancient walks with these children, something beyond explanation, something that knows fear more intimately than we do. One of the earliest widely publicized black-eyed children encounters came from journalist Brian Bethel in Abilene, Texas, in 1996. He was sitting in his parked car outside a movie theater when 2 boys approached. They asked for a ride home to get money to see a film. Bethel was struck by their strange appearance, overly formal language, and how everything in him screamed to roll up the window and flee. It wasn't until later that he realized their eyes were completely black. No detail, no reflection, just darkness. Since that post on an early internet forum, the phenomenon has spread rapidly, gaining traction in online communities, paranormal investigation groups, and alternative media channels focused on supernatural encounters. The black-eyed kids phenomenon doesn't exist in isolation. It shares elements with folklore from multiple cultures, fey children from Celtic legend, changelings from Nordic myths, and demonic impersonators from Middle Eastern lore. In Japan, there are stories of spirits that knock on doors in the guise of children, asking to be let in to consume the souls of the homeowners. In Appalachia, stories abound of mysterious children appearing during winter storms, only for the families who allowed them in to vanish without a trace. It's as if the BEKs are a modern incarnation of a much older archetype. Visitors wearing the skin of innocence to disguise their true nature. The psychological impact on BEK witnesses is profound. People report chronic anxiety, recurring nightmares, and even physical illness following their encounters. Some suffer from memory gaps, reporting hours of lost time. Others describe feeling watched long after the event, as if the children had marked them in some way. There are reports of nosebleeds, migraines, and even unexplained bruises. Animals in homes where BEKs appear often react with terror, barking, growling, or hiding in closets. Cats hiss at empty spaces. Birds go silent, And in nearly every case, the black-eyed children never enter without permission. They ask, they wait, and they leave if refused. This detail echoes deeply with vampire lore and demonic entities across religious texts and folkloric traditions, where spiritual invaders require consent to cross thresholds. Skeptics argue that BEKs are a product of internet folklore, mass hysteria, or sleep paralysis hallucinations. But this doesn't explain daylight encounters. Reports from individuals with no prior knowledge of the phenomenon or physical symptoms experienced after the events. Nor does it explain the consistency across reports. Children around 10 to 14 years old wearing odd or outdated clothing, speaking in awkward or archaic phrasing, often barefoot or without coats in cold weather. They may ask to use a phone, to come in for food, or to wait inside until their parents arrive. Their voices are low and mechanical. Their expressions do not match their words. And always they have those eyes, impossible black, like polished obsidian, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. Some researchers propose that BEKs are alien-human hybrids, designed to resemble children, but failing in subtle ways. Their behavior is close but not quite human. Their appearance familiar but off. They might represent an experiment in infiltration, a trial run for entities seeking to understand and manipulate human environments. The eyes, in this theory, are a genetic mistake, proof that whoever designed these beings didn't fully comprehend human biology. Others suggest a demonic origin, citing the traditional belief that demons cannot create but only imitate. The black-eyed children, then, would be mockeries of innocence, false children made in the image of evil. There are even connections drawn between BEKs and Men in Black, MIB sightings. In both cases, the entities exhibit emotionless behavior, outdated dress, unusual speech patterns, and psychic pressure on witnesses. In some reports, black-eyed children arrive in older black sedans with tinted windows. In others, they vanish when the door is closed or the curtain is drawn. There are reports of individuals suffering nosebleeds or blackouts after seeing them. In one chilling case, a woman in Vermont allowed 2 BEKs into her home. Shortly after, she and her husband fell severely ill, their health deteriorating rapidly over the following weeks. Blood tests revealed rare cell abnormalities. Their home began experiencing electrical disturbances. Lights flickered, electronics failed. Their dog hid under the bed for days and refused to eat. The children were never seen again, but the damage was done. In Alaska, a ranger reported finding 2 barefoot children in sub-zero temperatures standing by a remote ranger station. When he approached, they both looked up simultaneously. Their eyes were solid black. He felt an overwhelming sense of panic and drove away without contacting them. Upon returning, they were gone, and no footprints remained in the snow. In Utah, a trucker saw 2 children walking along an abandoned stretch of highway at 3 a.m. He slowed down to help, but when they turned to face his headlights, he swerved off the road in shock. Their eyes, he said, were like 2 pits of tar. In Oregon, a woman returning home from a night shift found a small girl sitting on her porch swing. The girl asked to be let in to call her mother. The woman noticed the girl's eyes were entirely black and retreated inside, locking the door. The next morning, the swing was still moving. Scratches marked the wood of the front door. Thousands of such accounts have accumulated across online platforms, Reddit, YouTube, paranormal message boards, and long-forgotten blog posts. While many could be fabrications or creative writing, the volume and consistency are hard to dismiss entirely. Researchers in fringe circles have compiled data mapping BEK sightings geographically. Clusters appear around military installations, abandoned towns, and national parks, areas often linked to other paranormal phenomena. There's speculation that black-eyed kids may be tied to government experiments, spiritual gateways, or ancient entities reawakening in a modern age of digital surveillance and lost belief. The signature trait of BEKs, their need for invitation, remains a chilling consistency. It hints at a metaphysical rule they must follow. In folklore, this boundary exists to protect the sanctity of human free will. Spirits, vampires, and otherworldly beings must ask, because crossing that threshold uninvited would breach spiritual law. This lends credibility to the idea that BEKs are not simply lost children or hallucinations, but entities operating under laws older than humanity itself. And the implication is terrifying. If they ever find a way to bypass that rule, their reach could become limitless. Black-eyed kids have appeared at businesses, on military bases, at campsites, and in apartment buildings. There are reports from flight attendants who encountered them in airport lounges, of police officers who responded to missing child calls, only to be confronted by black-eyed children who vanished into thin air. In one case, a man working night security at a warehouse near Detroit found 2 children standing inside a locked facility with no record of entry. He described their presence as dead air, a void where sound seemed muffled and movement slowed. When he tried to contact them, they whispered in unison, "We can't come in unless you say yes." He fled the building and never returned. Each story feeds the mystery. Each encounter adds another thread to the web. The deeper one goes into the rabbit hole of BEK encounters, the more difficult it becomes to dismiss them as fiction. Too many people from too many places tell stories that intersect in eerie ways. The black-eyed children are always calm, always waiting, always asking, and always bringing with them an atmosphere that defies science and rational explanation. Some believe they are watchers. Others think they are harvesters. Whatever they are not human, and they are not alone. When asked later about their encounters, most witnesses describe a kind of psychic noise that precedes the arrival of the black-eyed kids. A sudden headache, ringing in the ears, flickering shadows at the edges of vision. Time seems to distort. Some report clocks stopping. Others say their watches tick backward or reset. It is not just a visual horror. It is something that invades the senses, something that presses down on consciousness with unnatural weight. Many describe the sensation not as fear, but as knowing, an awareness that something has arrived that should not exist. Not a ghost, not a child. Something that mimics both and belongs to neither. In rural areas, black-eyed children have been reported knocking on windows instead of doors. Sometimes they stand in the middle of country roads, forcing drivers to stop. When the driver exits the vehicle or rolls down the window, the child asks to be driven home or allowed inside the car. Those who refuse report strong nausea and disorientation afterward. In some cases, the engine fails entirely. Cell phones stop working. The location becomes an electronic dead zone. Some who attempt to film the children report corrupted files or wiped memory cards. It's as if the presence of BEKs scrambles more than human thought. It distorts technology atmosphere and reality itself. One man in Maine described being followed by two black-eyed children from a hiking trail to his car. Despite getting in quickly and locking the doors, he looked up to see them standing directly in front of his windshield, their faces inches from the glass. He turned the key, but the car would not start. The children stood motionless. When they spoke, their mouths barely moved. The words entered his mind, not his ears. He drove off eventually, but for days afterward he experienced blackouts, nosebleeds, and intense dreams involving unfamiliar symbols and whispering voices. He eventually abandoned his house, convinced that something had followed him home. Another woman in Calgary reported hearing the sound of a baby crying on her porch around 2 a.m. When she opened the door, there were two children, a boy and a girl, standing silently. They asked to be let in to use the phone. She noticed their eyes last. When she slammed the door and turned to run, her hallway light exploded above her. The security camera footage that night cut to static for 5 full minutes. When it resumed, the porch was empty. In the following days, she reported a string of misfortunes, lost time, electrical malfunctions, and a break-in where nothing was stolen, but objects had been moved. A neighbor's dog, previously friendly, began growling at her windows each night. In cities, BEKs have been reported in apartment lobbies, underground garages, and public restrooms. A night janitor in Chicago described cleaning a 10th floor office suite when the power flickered. Moments later, two children stood at the glass door, staring in. The building was locked. The elevator required a key card. There was no sound of steps. He watched in horror as they raised their hands in unison and pointed at him through the glass. He called building security. When they arrived, the children were gone, but the motion cameras recorded no entry or exit. That janitor quit the following week. In Europe, similar sightings have been described in remote villages, particularly in Eastern Europe and Scandinavia. An old man in Romania described a boy with black eyes appearing at his window every night for a week, saying nothing, just watching. On the final night, the boy spoke for the first time. "You invited me before you were born." The man passed away 3 days later of unknown causes. His room was found ice cold despite a running heater and closed windows. Linguists have examined transcripts of Beck's speech patterns and noted inconsistencies. Their phrasing often mimics early 20th century English or uses formality uncommon in modern youth. They use full sentences, no slang, no contractions, and they repeat key phrases like, "It won't take long," "This is important," or "We won't hurt you." Some believe this reveals a scripted nature, language not generated organically but memorized, rehearsed. This mechanical tone reinforces the sense that these children are not truly children at all, but beings wearing the image of children like a mask. There are reports of Beck's appearing during sleep paralysis episodes, standing at the foot of the bed, whispering phrases the victim does not understand. In some cases, two witnesses in the same home experience parallel dreams, each seeing black-eyed children entering the house, sometimes through walls, sometimes stepping out of mirrors. A few even reported waking to find muddy footprints on their floor with no sign of entry. While skeptics cite sleep paralysis as a neurological condition, the shared experiences and physical traces add an unsettling dimension to these cases. In Montana, A pair of hunters camping in a national forest encountered two children sitting by their extinguished fire in the early morning hours. The fire had died out, yet the children sat there as if waiting for it to resume. When asked how they got there, the boy replied, "We followed the smoke." But there had been no smoke for hours. The hunters described an oppressive silence. No birds, no insects. Even the wind had stopped. One man reached for his rifle and felt paralyzed. He dropped to his knees and vomited. The children never moved. When the men returned to town, their watches were 5 hours off, and their compass spun in circles. Theories about the true nature of black-eyed kids multiply as more encounters are reported. Some connect them to the phenomenon of shadow people, suggesting BEKs are a daytime manifestation of those night visitors. Others believe they are tulpas, thought forms brought into reality by collective belief. As more people read about BEKs, their psychic mass increases, making them more real, more present. The internet, then, becomes not just a place for sharing stories, but a breeding ground for actual entities, feeding off attention and fear. In the UFO community, some believe BEKs are reconnaissance beings, biological drones sent by extraterrestrials to test human behavior. Their strange appearance, emotional manipulation, and psychological impact all point to something designed to probe, not integrate. There are reports of BEKs vanishing into thin air or boarding black vehicles that disappear from traffic cameras. In one case, after a BEK encounter, a woman reported finding an implant behind her ear, an object doctors could not identify that later vanished on its own. Her home surveillance footage for that night showed 4 hours of missing time. Demonic theories continue to dominate religious forums and spiritual communities. Priests and shamans have weighed in, calling BEKs deceptive spirits seeking spiritual access to human lives. The invitation in this theory is not just physical, but symbolic. Permission to attach, to invade, to possess. Some victims of BEK encounters later report haunting phenomena, sleepwalking episodes, or voices whispering their names. One man in Louisiana reported seeing the black-eyed children in mirrors for weeks after telling them no. They would appear just behind him, unmoving, fading the moment he turned. Psychologists have tried to explain BEK sightings using cognitive dissonance, sleep paralysis, mass hysteria, pareidolia, and false memory implantation. Yet these attempts often fail to address the uniformity of details reported across vast distances, age groups, and cultural backgrounds. Children with pale skin, monotone voices, strange phrasing, and entirely black eyes. Always asking to be let in, always invoking fear, dread, and sometimes illness. The experiences are not isolated. They span decades, cultures, and even languages. Some researchers argue that even if BEKs are psychological projections, the consistency suggests a deeper archetype in the human subconscious. Perhaps a primordial symbol of invasion, mimicry, or predation in human form. In Japan, there are legends of the Kurome no Kodomo, or children with black eyes, dating back to Edo period ghost stories. In one case from Osaka in the 1700s, a merchant's wife reported children with inky black eyes arriving at her door during a thunderstorm. They asked for salt. When she refused, her entire household fell ill, livestock died, and the house was later found abandoned. Folklore from Scandinavia mentions the Svartabarn, or black-eyed children, who were believed to be omens of famine and death. In modern sightings across Sweden and Norway, the same pattern holds. Children with black eyes appear at night, asking to enter, and those who refuse are plagued by misfortune and unexplained symptoms. In Brazil, reports of crianças de olhos pretos describe eerily similar encounters, often accompanied by electronic disturbances and emotional trauma. A taxi driver in São Paulo reported picking up 2 children late at night. He noticed their unnatural silence and unblinking stares. When they asked to be taken to a location that did not exist on GPS, he grew suspicious. He later realized they had no reflection in his rearview mirror. When he dropped them at a remote park, they vanished the moment he turned around. His dash cam captured only static during the entire ride. He has since been hospitalized multiple times for migraines, blackouts, and vision problems. In Australia, a woman from Perth found 2 black-eyed children standing barefoot in her garden during a power outage. They asked for help, claiming they were lost, but she never saw their lips move. She slammed the door, and her husband found her hours later, staring into a corner, repeating, "They found us." She later claimed to have seen them in her dreams for weeks, always closer, always smiling. After reporting the incident to police, she began receiving phone calls filled with static, occasionally broken by whispering voices calling her by name. No number was ever registered to the calls. Patterns have emerged in the locations of BEK sightings, often near military bases, electromagnetic anomalies, ley lines, or ancient burial sites. Clusters of encounters appear around areas known for other paranormal activity, UFO sightings, disappearances, and poltergeist reports. Researchers believe this may indicate that children are drawn to places of heightened energy or thin veils between dimensions. A man in Sedona, Arizona, famous for its vortexes, encountered a black-eyed girl outside his cabin. She said she was looking for her dog. When he refused to help, she grinned and walked into the desert without leaving footprints. Later, he discovered 3 deep claw marks across the inside of his front door, despite it never being opened. A chilling report from Iceland involved a small village where 3 families independently reported black-eyed children knocking on their windows over 3 nights. On the 4th day, every chicken in the village died overnight. A local priest conducted an exorcism on the town's perimeter. No children were seen afterward, but residents claimed the air smelled of sulfur for days. Some speculated that BEKs are not physical beings at all, but projections from another realm, manifestations of psychic parasites that feed on emotional disturbance, confusion, and fear. A man in Dublin, Ireland, described black-eyed twins waiting outside his car in a fog-covered parking lot. They knocked once, then stood silently. He never opened the door but claimed to feel a sharp pain behind his eyes, as though something were drilling into his brain. His nose bled profusely for an hour afterward. A hospital scan showed no cause. Since then, he's reported seeing flashes of shadowy figures at the edges of mirrors and TVs. The twins, he says, now appear in his dreams asking, "Will you let us in now?" These phenomena also align with electronic voice phenomena, EVP. In several BEK encounters, victims who later attempted to document their experiences with voice recorders caught unexplained whispers layered beneath the ambient noise. Words such as permission, open, now, and inside are common. One woman in Oregon recorded what sounded like children crying, but when slowed down, the audio revealed guttural growls beneath the sobs. Audio engineers could not replicate the results or identify the sound sources. Others attempting to recreate the phenomenon in controlled environments encountered nothing. Only when the encounter was genuine did the anomalies appear. The concept of invitation remained central. BEKs never force their way in. They always ask. They wait. Some theorists believe this mimics ancient rules of demonic lore, spirits that require human consent to cross thresholds. Others link it to vampire mythology, where the undead must be invited before entering a home. In both traditions, the act of permission signifies surrendering a degree of spiritual or psychic control. A young man in Indiana allowed 2 BEKs into his apartment. Within minutes, he collapsed. Neighbors found him unconscious, surrounded by pools of water despite no plumbing leak. He later reported recurring dreams of drowning and strangers standing at his bedside whispering, "You let them through." Survivors of BEK encounters often share long-term symptoms: migraines, memory loss, insomnia, paranoia, and changes in personality. Relationships deteriorate. Animals grow aggressive toward them. Electrical devices malfunction in their presence. Some develop obsessive behaviors, researching BEKs for hours, convinced they are being watched. A few go missing entirely. One forum user chronicled his experience in detail, only to disappear after posting a final message. They are not what they seem. They come when you look too long. Satellite imagery has occasionally shown unexplained shadows or figures near the homes of BEK witnesses. In a case from New Mexico, a researcher reviewing Google Earth history noticed a small black figure outside the window of a woman who had filed a BEK report. The image dated weeks before she claimed to see them. This raises questions about precognition, whether BEKs are not just random visitors, but entities that select their targets in advance, watching and waiting for the moment of contact. As sightings increase globally, researchers debate whether we are witnessing an emergent phenomenon tied to the digital age, or the resurfacing of something ancient, once forgotten, now remembered. The more people speak of the black-eyed children, the more they seem to appear. Unlike urban legends that fade, BEK reports are rising, and each one is eerily consistent. Eyes black as ink, formal clothing, monotone voices, always asking, always waiting. One chilling theory suggests BEKs are precursors to something larger, scouting figures, harbingers. Like the Mothman was said to precede disaster, BEKs may represent the first phase of an invasion, not of Earth, but of the human mind, a psychic infiltration. By seeding themselves into belief systems, they occupy a space between reality and imagination. Once believed in, they become real. Once invited, they never truly leave. And so they wait, on porches, outside cars, in lobbies, behind glass, always at the boundary, never crossing it, unless you say yes. There are those who believe the black-eyed children are not physical beings at all, but artificial constructs, avatars projected into our world through electromagnetic manipulation or advanced technologies far beyond human comprehension. One fringe theory suggests BEKs are part of an interdimensional surveillance program, entities created from pure thought or artificial intelligence, designed to test humanity's emotional responses, free will, and spiritual thresholds. Their strange, outdated phrasing, glitch-like behavior, and their inability to enter uninvited all suggest they are operating under protocols they don't fully control. Programs, not instincts. Some researchers point to the connection between BEK encounters and brainwave interference. Victims often report feeling dizzy, confused, or emotionally numb during the encounters, suggesting frequency manipulation. Infrasound, known to induce fear, nausea, and hallucinations in humans, could explain the dread associated with BEK sightings. However, infrasound cannot account for consistent physical changes, burned out electronics, drained batteries, corrupted memory cards, or recorded voices that shouldn't exist. These effects hint at something more than mere psychological manipulation, something environmental, something tangible, something invasive. In a chilling 2022 case from Ontario, a paranormal investigator received dozens of reports from a rural community plagued by BEK sightings over 2 weeks. Multiple families claimed children with black eyes approached their properties late at night, asking to use phones, enter homes, or see pets. When refused, residents experienced vivid nightmares, electronics caught fire, and pets died under unexplained circumstances. One man disappeared entirely after allowing a BEK into his camper. All they found was his journal. The last entry read, "They are inside me now." A striking commonality across thousands of reports is how BEKs vanish the moment they're denied. Not like someone walking away, but instantaneously. Blink, and they're gone. The logical impossibility of their exits has led some to believe they are not bound by physical laws. They don't need to leave through doors or retreat into forests. They dissolve, collapse inward, or fade into shadow. Witnesses often report a sudden rush of air pressure or a metallic ringing in the ears as they disappear. Sensations often tied to dimensional shifts or quantum fluctuations in theoretical physics. The black-eyed children are always in pairs or threes, never alone, never accompanied by adults. Yet they always know too much about the person they're visiting. They call homeowners by name. They reference dead relatives. They mention details not public. This suggests access to knowledge beyond normal means, possibly drawn from psychic probing, remote viewing, or advanced surveillance. Some have theorized that BEKs harvest emotional data, perhaps even energy. They don't feed on blood, but fear. Their goal isn't violence, it's erosion, emotional, psychological, spiritual, to chip away at the human will by forcing a choice. Let them in or risk what happens next. In certain rare reports, the black-eyed children have succeeded in entering a home. These cases are few, and almost all end with tragedy. Victims report illness, delusions, and sudden deaths of pets or family members. One man in Nebraska, who allowed 2 children into his home during a snowstorm, died of a heart attack 2 days later. His wife went missing a week after that. Police found symbols carved into the walls, ancient runes that no local scholar could identify. One resembled the shape of an eye crossed by a single vertical line. Neighbors reported seeing 2 pale children watching the house from the woods for days afterward. A recurring symbol in many BEK encounters is the triangle. Whether carved into surfaces, drawn on windows and condensation, or described in dreams after the events, triangles appear with alarming frequency. This has led some to connect BEKs to secret societies, ancient occult networks, or even military psyops. The triangle is often associated with gateways, balance between dimensions, or Trinity-based spiritual structures. Are BEKs simply warning signs, the opening act to something greater? Or are they part of a larger geometric ritual happening on a planetary scale, one encounter at a time? People who research BEKs for too long often report dreams of knocking, always at night, always just beyond the bedroom door. Some awaken to find muddy prints on the carpet. Others report smelling sulfur or decay in the air. The obsession with these entities seems to attract them, as if researching them is a kind of passive invitation. You don't need to speak. You just need to believe. You just need to open a part of your mind they can use as a doorway. A growing online community has emerged among those who claim they are being followed, watched, or revisited by BEKs years after the original incident. One forum is full of people who see them in crowds now, at malls, schools, even airports. Normal children who seem to freeze, turn, and reveal those empty black eyes for a split second before returning to normal. This suggests BEKs may be blending more effectively, no longer dressed in outdated clothes, no longer stilted in their speech. They are evolving, adapting to new generations, preparing for something larger. Some whisper that the final phase is assimilation, not by force, but by normalization. Once the image of a black-eyed child becomes familiar, it loses its threat. And when fear is gone, resistance weakens. If they can make themselves common, they can step in fully, not as threats, but as accepted anomalies. Like gray aliens in the 90s, the Slender Man in the 2000s and 10s, or shadow people before that. BEKs may be this generation's psychological invader, a sentient idea spreading through fear, obsession, and the desperate need for answers. There is no known method to prevent a BEK encounter. There are no consistent protective tools, no crucifixes, no holy water, no EMF shielding. What seems to matter most is awareness, refusal, maintaining the boundary between their world and ours. Once that line is crossed, there is no clear way to go back. Many who've let them in have never been the same, and some have never been seen again. Whistleblowers in fringe science communities have begun connecting BEK phenomena to quantum bleed events, brief moments where realities overlap, where entities from other timelines can step through. This theory explains their inconsistency with physical laws, their psychic knowledge, and their impact on electronics. If BEKs are born from the collapse of parallel dimensions, then each sighting may be a wound in the structure of our universe. Every knock may signal another fracture. To date, there are thousands of reported encounters across every continent, from the snowy villages of Russia to the deserts of Nevada, from high-rise towers in Tokyo to rural farms in Ghana. The descriptions match. The sequence is always the same. A knock, a request, black eyes. A feeling that something ancient and wrong has found its way to your threshold. And always the same question. Will you let us in? What's more terrifying is what we still don't know. Are BEKs just scouts? Are they here to study us or replace us? Are they remnants of a forgotten race or synthetic messengers from another dimension? Or are they not visitors at all but part of us? Manifestations of a collective shadow birthed by fear, trauma, and the digital hive mind. Even now, more cases surface, new footage, new testimonies, but the core pattern never deviates. Those who encounter the black-eyed children are changed, not always physically, but psychologically, spiritually. They carry the memory like a stain, like a scar that never quite fades, because somewhere behind the mask of childlike innocence lies a void, deep, hungry, watching. So if one night, long after midnight, you hear a knock at the door and a soft voice asking to come inside, don't answer. Don't look through the peephole. Don't speak. Don't give permission. Because once you acknowledge them, once you give them even a crack in your resolve, They'll never really leave. They'll wait. In the shadows, in the corners, in the mirrors, waiting for the next time you feel weak, the next time you're alone, the next time you start to forget how black their eyes were, because the black-eyed children never stop asking. And the only thing standing between them and whatever they truly want is your answer. All right, folks, our historical mystery for today have come to an end. If you really enjoy this type of mystery narrations, don't hesitate to mention that in the comment section. Until that time, I will talk to you in the next one. Au revoir.